Unaware his wife had won $500 million and was pregnant with twins, he divorced her to marry another woman. Years later, his empire collapses, and he's forced to beg a mysterious billionaire for help, not knowing she's the wife he betrayed. Stay till the end. This story proves some treasures are priceless. Henry, please slow down, you're scaring me. Clara's voice trembled as the car swerved into the empty parking lot behind the courthouse. The engine cut off. Silence settled like a cold slap. Henry didn't look at her. He just breathed hard, angry, impatient, as if her very presence disgusted him. Then he said the words that sliced her world in half. "Clara, I want a divorce." She blinked. "Oh, what? A divorce?" he repeated, shoving a stack of papers onto her lap. "Sign it. We're done." No explanation. No hesitation. Just cruelty in its simplest form. Her fingers shook around the papers. "Henry, this is sudden. We didn't talk." "We don't need to talk," he snapped. "I've made up my mind." "Why?" she whispered. "What did I do?" He laughed bitterly. "Clara, you didn't do anything. You just aren't enough for where I'm going in life. I need a woman who matches my goals, my ambition, my future. You're comfortable. And I don't want to be comfortable." Her eyes burned. "We've been together 8 years. Exactly. 8 years of me carrying you." He grabbed the papers back and flipped to a page. "Sign it. You'll get the house and the old car. That's fair." Clara swallowed the pain clawing up her throat. "Is there someone else?" Henry stared at her with a smirk she had never seen before. "Yes, Juliet. She's everything you're not. Driven. Connected. Her father owns Peterson Holdings. With her I have a future. With you," he shrugged dismissively, "I have dead weight." Clara's heartbeat cracked. "Henry, how can you say that?" "Because it's the truth." He leaned closer, eyes cold. "I don't love you. I don't want you. I don't need you. And frankly, you should be grateful I'm giving you anything at all." Her hands trembled. "Henry, please. Don't beg," he snapped. "It won't change anything. The sooner you accept you're not part of my future, the better." Clara felt her voice break. "I thought we were building a family." "Exactly," he said, climbing out of the car. "You thought. I didn't." He shoved the door closed and started walking toward the courthouse entrance. Clara scrambled out behind him. "Henry, wait. Please, just talk to me." He stopped and turned sharply. "Clara, listen carefully." His voice dropped to a cruel whisper. "My decision is final. I'm done living small. Juliet is my future. You are my past. Sign the damn papers." The wind stung her eyes. Clara clutched her stomach unconsciously. She didn't know it yet, but her body was already carrying the twins he would never meet. "Henry, don't do this." He stepped back, as if her pleading was contaminating him. "You'll survive. People like you always do." He walked away. She stood frozen in the cold morning air, watching the man she loved walk out of her life without even looking back. At that moment, the clerk opened the courthouse doors, calling his name. And he entered smiling. That smile cut deeper than the divorce. It was the smile of a man who believed he had traded up. Clara forced herself to step into the courthouse. Her chest tightened with every sound. Papers flipping, pens clicking, the echo of Henry's laughter as Juliet called him on the phone. Clara signed where she was told. She barely heard anything. Everything was a blur. When it was over, Henry approached her with a smug expression. "There. Simple. Clean. You'll be fine." He extended a hand as if giving charity. "Take care of yourself, Clara." She didn't take his hand. He scoffed and walked out. As he stepped outside, Clara whispered, "You'll regret this." He didn't hear her. But fate did. Clara didn't cry. Not at first. Tears can't fall when shock freezes them. She walked to the parking lot like a ghost, reached her car and sat inside. That's when the pain spilled out, uncontrollable, raw, soul deep. She pressed her forehead to the steering wheel. Why, Henry? Why wasn't I enough? Her phone buzzed. Voicemail. Mr. Arthur. Her late father's lawyer. She wiped her face and pressed play. Mrs. Mitchell, we urgently need you to come in today. It's regarding your father's estate. There are matters you must be informed about immediately. It concerns a substantial sum. Please come as soon as possible. Clara's breath caught. Substantial. Her father had been a simple man. Hardworking. Quiet. Hidden. He never appeared wealthy. She didn't know yet. The word substantial meant over $500 million. Money Henry would never touch. Money that would rewrite her entire destiny. And money she would later use to rebuild her life, transform her identity, and rise higher than Henry ever dreamed, while he spiraled downward with the woman he threw everything away for. Clara gripped the steering wheel. Her tears stopped. Her heart steadied. And for the first time since Henry said divorce, she breathed in and didn't break. God, give me strength, she whispered. To anyone watching this, if you've ever been abandoned, betrayed, or discarded, don't let this moment destroy you. Subscribe, because the rest of this journey, you're going to want to see it. Clara started the engine. Behind her, the courthouse doors opened again, and Henry stepped out with Juliet wrapped around his arm. They were laughing, loud, carefree, cruel. Clara didn't look back. She drove forward, toward the lawyer, toward the truth, toward the inheritance that would change her life, toward the future that would one day force Henry to kneel before her. The world had just taken everything from her, but it was about to give her more than she ever imagined. Clara parked outside the old law firm building, her hands still trembling from the morning's betrayal. Henry's laughter and Juliet's shrill giggle still echoed in her mind, but she forced herself to focus. Her father's lawyer, Mr. Arthur, was waiting, and she had learned from the voicemail that her life as she knew it had already shifted in ways Henry could never predict. She entered the building. The smell of polished wood and aged paper hit her, but she didn't notice. Her mind was elsewhere. Mr. Arthur emerged from his office, a stack of folders in his hands. His expression serious but tinged with excitement. Clara, he said softly, please sit. There's a lot to go over. She sat, legs crossed, fists clenched. Her voice was tight. Mr. Arthur, what is this about? He handed her a folder. Your father left some instructions, and it's significant. Very significant. Clara opened the folder, scanning page after page. Investment portfolios, real estate holdings, unclaimed lottery winnings. Her eyes widened as the numbers added up. Over $500 million. $500 million she had no idea existed. Her breath caught. This is real. Arthur nodded. Every penny. Your father was meticulous. And there's more. Clara looked up. More. You have something else you didn't know about, he said carefully. And it's not in the folder. Clara frowned. What do you mean? Your pregnancy, he said. I understand you're recently divorced. But, Clara froze. Her hands went to her stomach instinctively. You're pregnant, Arthur continued. Twins, if I'm not mistaken. Her mind went blank. She hadn't even processed it yet. She had just received the news from her doctor. She remembered the late nights she had felt sick, the sudden fatigue, the fluttering in her stomach, but she had assumed it was stress. She hadn't told anyone. Not Henry, not her closest friends. Now, it seemed, her secret had become a pivotal part of her future. Arthur gave her a measured look. You have 2 lives to consider, and an inheritance that could secure everything for them. Clara's chest tightened. Her mind raced. Her first thought, Henry. He had no idea she was pregnant. He had walked away, thinking he was free of responsibility, thinking he was moving on to someone better. She could feel the heat of anger rising but tempered by a strange calm. She realized that the power had shifted. She now held the keys to her own destiny, and to the future of her children. Arthur handed her another folder. This is a detailed plan for how to manage your inheritance. investments, foundations, trusts, all set up to protect you and the children. You also have the option to take a new identity if you wish. It's recommended for privacy and safety. Clara's pulse quickened. A new identity. Yes, Arthur said. It would allow you to start fresh, separate from the past. You could reinvent yourself completely, control your image, and build a life on your terms. Considering your situation. His eyes softened. It might be the safest route. Clara looked out the window at the busy street below. People rushed past, oblivious to the storm that had just shattered her life, and the one that was beginning to form. She could almost see Henry, thinking he had won, laughing with Juliet. Soon she realized he would see the difference. "Mr. Arthur," she said finally, voice steadying. "I want to do it. I want a new name, a new life. I want to protect my children and make sure nothing like this can ever happen again." Arthur nodded. "Then we'll proceed immediately. You'll have access to all resources, legal protections, and financial guidance. You can even start investing now. I'd also recommend a mentor to guide you, someone who can teach you how to grow your fortune responsibly." Clara's mind went to a single thought. I will be more than he ever imagined. I will be untouchable. Her heart, however, carried another secret, one she didn't speak aloud yet. The anger she felt was tempered by a strange, protective love for the twins. They had not yet seen the world, but she already knew they would inherit not only her fortune but her strength. Arthur smiled, as if he could see her determination. "One last thing," he said. "You need to act fast. Henry may not know, but people like him always sense opportunity. You can't let anyone compromise this. Keep your pregnancy private. Keep your inheritance private. You need complete control over your life." Clara swallowed hard, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "I understand. I won't fail them." "No," Arthur said softly. "You won't. Not with the plan in place. And remember, strength, patience, and careful strategy will change everything." Clara rose from her chair. "Then it begins." She walked out of the office into the afternoon sunlight. The world felt both smaller and infinitely larger at the same time. She had lost Henry, her home, her old life, but she had gained something infinitely more powerful, a secret no one could touch, and the ability to build a future on her own terms. As she stepped into her car, she sent a silent message to the universe. Let him live in ignorance. Let him feel confident. Soon, he will see who I've become. And she whispered into the wind, almost as if speaking to her unborn children. "Liam, Lily, Mommy's going to protect you. Mommy's going to make sure the world bows to you one day. And we start today." Clara drove off. The city lights seemed to shine differently now. The streets full of possibility, of secrets, and of a future waiting to be claimed. Every mile she drove was a step further away from Henry's shadow and closer to her destiny. Somewhere in the distance, she could imagine him smiling with Juliet, unaware that the woman he discarded was about to rewrite the rules of their lives, and of his downfall. Clara Mitchell Grant. The name had yet to be fully claimed, but already it carried power in her heart. And the world would soon know her, not as the wife he abandoned, but as the force that no one, not even Henry, could ever stop. Clara drove through the city streets, her mind buzzing with calculations, strategies, and possibilities. The betrayal of Henry and the secret of her pregnancy weighed heavily, but there was also a thrill, an electric sense that her life was about to be rebuilt, brick by brick, on her own terms. The $500 million inheritance wasn't just money. It was freedom. It was power. It was the instrument of her comeback. She arrived at the exclusive office of David, a financial mentor recommended by Mr. Arthur. Tall, precise, and imposing, David didn't waste words. He sized her up with one look, as if reading her entire life story in her eyes. "You're late," he said, though his voice was neutral, almost indifferent. "I needed time to process," Clara admitted, sitting across from him. "Processing what was taken from me, and what I now have." David leaned back in his chair. "Fair. But time is the one thing you don't have. You've inherited more than you know how to manage. And if you want to rise and rise fast, you need guidance. You also need a plan that goes beyond simple investments. You need strategy, influence, and control. Clara nodded. She felt a surge of determination. I want to build an empire. I want to never be powerless again. David's eyes glinted. Good. That's the right attitude. We'll start by securing your assets, creating multiple layers of protection, and establishing your public persona. You're not just inheriting money, you're inheriting responsibility, influence, and reputation. And if handled correctly, you'll be untouchable. But make no mistake. Mistakes now will cost you dearly. Clara swallowed the lump in her throat but refused to show hesitation. I won't fail. I can't fail. Excellent, David said. First step, a new identity. You will become Clara Mitchell Grant. Grant after your mother. Strong, respected, untraceable back to your past. This is your shield and your sword. Clara felt a thrill run through her. I like it. I want it. And then we begin. Investments, philanthropy, high-profile ventures. You'll need to be everywhere, yet invisible. You'll need to command respect, influence decisions, and prepare for certain encounters. Clara's mind drifted briefly to Henry, the man who had walked out, thinking he had won. She imagined his shock when the woman he discarded became untouchable, untamed, unstoppable. David handed her a tablet, showing a portfolio of suggested investments. Real estate, tech startups, a few selective media acquisitions. You'll diversify risk and maximize influence. But don't get distracted by flashy deals. They're traps. Control is your goal, not quick money. Clara studied the numbers, mentally noting how each venture could serve multiple purposes. Profit, public image, and eventual leverage over those who had underestimated her. Understood, she said firmly. I want to start immediately. David smiled faintly. I like your fire. But remember, patience is power. Slow, deliberate moves will yield far more than reckless spending. Clara exhaled, feeling a strange calm for the first time in weeks. She had a plan. She had resources. She had vision. And she had something Henry would never understand. She had herself. The next days were a blur of signatures, meetings, and strategic planning. Clara changed her phone number, her address, and even the way she dressed. She hired personal trainers, image consultants, and legal advisors. Each step was calculated, purposeful, a brick in the foundation of the empire she was about to build. Even her pregnancy became a tool of quiet power. She kept it secret, only allowing herself a small sanctuary of privacy. To the outside world, Clara Mitchell Grant was emerging as a figure of elegance, influence, and intelligence, but utterly untouchable, untied to her past. One evening, while reviewing investment proposals with David, her phone buzzed. A notification from Henry's social media popped up, a photo of him and Juliet at a gala, smiling, champagne glasses raised. Clara studied it, lips curling slightly. He had no idea. No idea about the inheritance. No idea about the twins. No idea that he had just traded a wife who was about to become unstoppable for a fleeting illusion of happiness. She whispered almost to herself, "One day, Henry, you'll understand. But not today." David looked up from his tablet. "Something on your mind?" Clara shook her head. "Just old ghosts. They'll stay ghosts for now." Later that night, Clara stood in front of the mirror, wearing a tailored black suit that hugged her figure perfectly. The reflection staring back wasn't the woman Henry had abandoned. It wasn't the vulnerable wife, trembling in parking lots. It was Clara Mitchell Grant. Poised, dangerous, confident. Every ounce of betrayal had been converted into steel. She touched her stomach gently. "Liam, Lily, Mommy's building a world for you. A world where no one can hurt you. Where we are untouchable." A sudden knock at the door startled her. It was David, holding a folder of the latest legal documents and investment proposals. "You're working too hard," he said. Clara smirked. "I can't afford to rest." "Not yet." David's eyes lingered on her for a moment. I've seen a lot of people rise fast. Very few sustain it. Most burn out or get consumed by revenge. You seem different. You're not angry enough to fail, and not naive enough to fall. That balance is rare. Clara smiled faintly. Good. Then I'll make it last. And with that, the foundation of her empire was laid. Every deal, every strategy, every calculated decision would take her closer to power. She wasn't doing it for revenge, though she could already taste the irony of Henry's future downfall, but for security, legacy, and the promise of a life she could control entirely. If you want to see how someone rises from nothing, how betrayal turns into power, and how a woman builds an empire, subscribe and follow this journey. You'll learn what it truly means to claim your life back. David raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Clara smiled at her reflection again. This woman, this identity, was unstoppable. She had left Henry behind. She had embraced the secret of the twins. She had claimed the fortune. And soon, very soon, the world would recognize Clara Mitchell Grant as a force to be reckoned with. Henry's life seemed perfect. At least that's what the outside world saw. Champagne in hand, laughing at a gala. Juliet clinging to his arm like a trophy. Peterson Holdings board members praised his vision. Investors sent congratulatory emails, and the media granted him as a man who had traded comfort for ambition. But behind the smiles and the flash photography, cracks were forming. Juliet was relentless. She criticized Henry at every turn, pushing him to invest in flashy but reckless deals. You need bigger, faster, better, she'd snap, her manicured nails tapping aggressively on the conference table. Do you want people to remember you as mediocre, Henry? Mediocre is for losers. Henry, eager to impress, nodded obediently. Yes, Juliet. I'll handle it. One night, after another stressful board meeting, he returned to their penthouse, exhausted. Juliet was waiting, perfectly poised, sipping wine. Darling, she said sweetly, though the edge in her tone was unmistakable. That deal you made today. It's too safe. I want risk. I want headlines. I want people to notice you. Henry rubbed his temples. Juliet, I'm managing millions here. Risking it all could backfire. She leaned forward, voice low but sharp. If you can't take risks, Henry, then what are you even doing? You promised me the world. Don't let me down. The pressure, the constant push for more, weighed on him like a storm cloud. He felt trapped, but he didn't realize it yet. The man who had left Clara thinking he was free was now shackled by ambition, and a woman who saw him as a tool, not a partner. Meanwhile, Clara was quietly building her empire. Every strategic move she made, every calculated investment, positioned her to influence the very industries Henry thought he could dominate. And she wasn't doing it recklessly. She was deliberate, patient, untouchable. Henry, unaware of her rise, began to feel the first cracks in his confidence. One of his investments, a flashy tech startup Juliet had insisted he fund, began hemorrhaging money. Millions were lost overnight. Panic seeped into board meetings, and whispers of mismanagement started circulating. Juliet blamed Henry immediately. You didn't read the fine print. You're careless, she shrieked during a particularly tense meeting. Henry's face burned. He wanted to defend himself, to argue, but he knew he was in trouble. Investors were nervous. The media smelled blood. And worst of all, he couldn't turn to anyone he trusted. His friends were cautious, his advisors were conflicted, and Juliet's ambitions overshadowed all rational decisions. At night, he lay awake, haunted by the life he thought he had gained. His mind drifted briefly to Clara, though he would never admit it aloud. She had been predictable, safe, loyal, everything he claimed he wanted to escape, but now he realized how little he understood the woman he had left behind. Back in her own world, Clara received updates from her financial advisors and David. Every failing of Henry's investments was quietly documented. Every reckless move recorded. She didn't rejoice in his mistakes openly. She didn't need to. His collapse was inevitable, built on the very greed and ignorance that had pushed him away from her. One evening, David spoke to her in private. "Henry is spiraling. Juliet's influence is destructive, and he has no backup plan. If he seeks external help soon, he might end up coming to you without even knowing it." Clara's lips curled into a faint, cold smile. "I don't need him to know yet. Let him stew in his mistakes. Let him feel the consequences of abandoning me." David nodded. "Patience is key. When the time comes, the leverage will be yours. But remember, your power lies not just in money but in discretion, in control. Don't let emotion push you into a premature confrontation." Clara turned her thoughts inward, placing her hand over her stomach. The twins were growing. Liam and Lily were already her motivation, her shield, her reason for strategy and patience. They were the invisible allies no one could ever touch. Not Henry, not Juliet, not the world. Meanwhile, Henry faced another blow. Juliet's father, sensing the growing instability, began pressuring Henry to make even riskier investments to demonstrate his worth. Henry's confidence cracked. He tried to salvage the deals, but it was too late. The company was bleeding cash faster than he could calculate. And yet, he never considered Clara. He had no idea that the woman he abandoned, the one he had discarded without a second thought, now had the resources, the strategy, and the invisibility cloaked to influence industries, to protect her children, and to control outcomes far beyond his reach. Juliet, meanwhile, demanded more attention. "You're losing your touch, Henry. Investors are talking. If you don't fix this immediately, we lose everything. Do you want to be a failure? Do you want to be nothing?" Henry's stomach twisted. For the first time he felt powerless. The confident man who had walked away from Clara with arrogance and entitlement now felt the crushing weight of ignorance, greed, and impatience. He couldn't see it yet, but the seeds of his downfall had been planted. Clara, miles away, smiled quietly to herself. She continued her calls, her meetings, her investments. She built alliances with key players in the business world. Every step was deliberate. Every decision layered upon another, strengthening her empire while Henry's world teetered. And somewhere deep inside she allowed herself a whisper of irony. "You thought you traded up, Henry. But you have no idea who I've become. And one day you will." As she closed her laptop that night, she spoke softly into the empty room. "Liam, Lily, we are unstoppable. One day he will see what he lost. And until then we rise." Outside, the city lights glittered like a promise. Clara Mitchell Grant was no longer just a name. She was a force in the making, calculated, patient, and untouchable. And Henry? He remained oblivious, smiling at Juliet, drinking champagne, thinking he had won. Little did he know, the real game had only just begun. Clara Mitchell Grant stood in the corner office of her newly acquired building, the city skyline reflecting in the floor-to-ceiling windows. The office was sleek, modern, but more importantly, it was hers. Every deal she had signed, every investment she had approved, every careful strategy implemented had led to this moment. She wasn't just wealthy, she was powerful. She was untouchable. Her phone buzzed. It was David, her mentor and advisor. "Clara," he said, his voice clipped with urgency. "Henry's investment in Nexatech just tanked. He's hemorrhaging millions. Juliet's pressuring him for immediate returns. He's desperate. And from what I can tell, he's starting to reach out to external investors." Clara's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. She had predicted this. Every reckless decision Henry had made, every deal Juliet had coerced him into, was a domino falling. And soon, he would unknowingly approach the very person he had discarded. "Perfect," Clara replied softly. "Let him come. I'll handle the rest." David hesitated. "Clara, you understand the implications, right? You could save his company if you wanted. But you'll need strict terms. He has no idea what's coming." "I know," Clara said. "I don't want to humiliate him unnecessarily. I just want him to understand. I am untouchable now. And that starts with him realizing what he lost. Over the next few weeks, Clara's name began to circulate in the highest circles of business and philanthropy. The Grant Foundation, funded entirely by her inheritance, launched several initiatives. Scholarships, hospitals, community centers. Every press release was carefully crafted to emphasize Clara's intelligence, vision, and generosity, without revealing her full identity or fortune. Her empire expanded quickly. Real estate holdings multiplied, startups she backed flourished, and the media quietly noticed her as a rising power player. She moved like a shadow across industries, shaping outcomes and acquiring influence with precision. Meanwhile, Henry's empire was crumbling. Nexateca's losses were mounting. Investors were restless. Juliet's criticism became relentless. "You're failing me, Henry," she shouted one evening during a private dinner. "Do you even understand the first thing about leadership? About power? You're weak." Henry clenched his fists. "I'm doing everything I can." "No. You're doing what I tell you to do." Juliet snapped, slamming her wine glass onto the table. Red wine splattered across the white tablecloth. "You're pathetic. You can't even save your own company, let alone live up to your name." He felt helpless. For the first time in his life, confidence didn't protect him. Every decision seemed wrong. Every move ended in disaster. The world he had thought he controlled was slipping through his fingers. Clara, on the other hand, worked late into the nights with David. Her office was quiet except for the soft hum of the city below. She pored over reports, negotiated high-stakes deals, and expanded her network with careful precision. She allowed herself a brief moment to touch her stomach. "Liam, Lily, Mommy's empire is for you. One day, everything he took from me will be ours, and you'll never want for anything." David watched her closely. "You're building more than wealth, Clara. You're building security, influence, and a reputation that will command respect. But don't let the past consume you. You control this narrative, not him." "I know," Clara said. "But the irony," she paused, a faint smile playing on her lips. "The irony of him struggling while I rise. It's satisfying. Not revenge. Just truth." The weeks passed. Clara's influence grew. Key investors sought her out for guidance. Corporations approached her for partnerships. And quietly in the shadows, she began acquiring small stakes in Henry's crumbling ventures, not enough to control yet, but enough to watch, to prepare. One night, David handed her a tablet with the latest financial report. "Clara, you need to see this. He's going to need outside investment soon. And you are in a position to be that outside investment. If he comes to you, you set the terms. Absolute terms." Clara leaned back, eyes glinting. "He'll come. He always comes when he's desperate. And when he does, he will realize that the woman he abandoned controls his fate." Her phone buzzed again. A social media alert from Henry. He had posted a desperate message seeking investors for Nexatec. Clara didn't reply. She didn't need to. The trap was already set. Instead, she drafted an email to David. "Prepare a proposal. If he contacts us, we negotiate on my terms. Let him feel the weight of his choices." David nodded. "Clara, you're remarkable. Most people wouldn't have the patience, the discipline, or the courage." Clara smiled faintly. "It's not courage. It's necessity. And a promise to myself and my children. They will inherit strength. They will inherit power. And nothing will stop us." That night, she looked out at the city lights from her office. The streets below were alive with oblivious people, rushing through their mundane lives, unaware that a storm was building above them. Clara Mitchell Grant was no longer a victim. She was the storm. And Henry was walking into it blind. As she turned off the lights and left the office, the city seemed to bend to her will, each skyscraper a symbol of potential, each shadow a reminder that her empire was rising, quietly, deliberately, and unstoppable. And somewhere across town, Henry stared at his failing balance sheets, unaware that the woman he discarded, the mother of children he didn't yet know existed, was orchestrating the events that would determine his fate. Clara Mitchell Grant had begun her reign. And nothing, not even Henry, could stand in her way. Clara Mitchell Grant sat in her private office, the glow from the city skyline casting long shadows across the floor. A single cup of untouched coffee sat at her side, growing cold, as her eyes scanned the latest financial reports on her tablet. Every number, every investment, every subtle movement in the market told a story, and every story pointed to one inevitable truth. Henry's empire was crumbling. David, her mentor and confidant, entered quietly. "He's reaching the point of desperation," he said, voice low, measured. "Within weeks, he'll have no choice but to seek outside help. And when he does..." Clara's fingers tapped rhythmically on her desk. "I'll be ready. I've built this patiently. Every decision calculated. Every move deliberate. He won't know who he's dealing with until it's too late." David nodded. "You understand, Clara. When you step into this confrontation, it's more than business. It's leverage, control, power. And it's all in your hands. But timing is everything. Miscalculate, and he could slip through your fingers." "I won't miscalculate," Clara said. Her voice was soft, yet carried a steel-like certainty. "I've waited too long. I've built too much. And I have more than just money. I have strategy, vision, influence. He thinks he's free, but the real control has always been mine." She stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing out at the twinkling city lights below. Every street, every building, every bustling office reminded her of the empire she was creating. Each decision she made, investments, partnerships, philanthropic foundations, was a step closer to complete independence. And each step brought her closer to the man who had abandoned her, blissfully ignorant of the power she now held. Her hand instinctively rested on her stomach. Liam and Lily were growing inside her, invisible yet driving her every action. They were the unspoken motivation behind every choice she made, the reason she could not afford mistakes, the reason she would never bow to fear or anger. David approached her with a new folder. "These are the terms I've drafted. If he comes to you for investment, you set the conditions. Absolute control. He doesn't know it yet, but everything hinges on your decisions now." Clara opened the folder, scanning the proposals. Her eyes narrowed at the numbers, at the leverage she could wield. Every clause, every stipulation, every condition was designed to place Henry entirely within her hands. "Yes," she whispered. "This is perfect. This is exactly how it should be." David hesitated for a moment. "Clara, you know, when he realizes he's at your mercy, he might plead. He might beg. Are you prepared for that?" Clara turned, eyes cold and unwavering. "I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this for control. For my children. For my future. If he begs, that's on him. He chose to walk away. He chose to leave me powerless. That ends now." The next few days were a flurry of activity. Clara finalized multiple investments, acquired controlling stakes in key industries, and expanded her philanthropic influence. Every decision was calculated to increase visibility while maintaining discretion. No one could trace the full extent of her empire. Not Henry, not Juliet, not any rival in the business world. Clara also rehearsed the meeting in her mind. She envisioned the conversation, the power dynamic, and the inevitable leverage she would hold. It was a mental exercise as much as a strategic plan. Every word, every gesture, every pause had a purpose. And then the first sign came. Henry, desperate and panicked, reached out to her, unknowingly, to request investment assistance for Nexatech. David showed her the email, carefully forwarded. Clara read it slowly, savoring the irony. The man who had abandoned her, the man who had discarded her without a second thought, was now asking the woman he left for help to save the very empire he thought he controlled. She smiled faintly. "Finally. The game begins." David's eyes narrowed. "Remember, Clara. You hold all the cards. But you must play them carefully. One misstep, one emotional reaction, and you could give him an advantage. He's desperate but cunning in his own way. Clara leaned back in her chair, her fingers intertwined. Let him be cunning. I've already won. I just need him to realize it. That night, as she prepared to leave the office, Clara looked once more at the city below. Every glowing light seemed to represent a step in her journey. Each investment, each partnership, each calculated move. And now, with Henry unknowingly stepping into her hands, the culmination of years of strategy, patience, and determination was about to unfold. She whispered softly, almost as if addressing the future itself. Liam Lilly. Soon he will see. Soon he will understand that your mother is untouchable. That no one can take what belongs to us. And everything he thought he controlled will be in our hands. Before leaving, she turned to David. Prepare the documents. Make sure everything is airtight. When he comes, it will be on my terms. No exceptions. David nodded. Understood. This is the moment we've been preparing for. Are you ready? Clara's eyes glinted with unwavering determination. I've never been more ready. If you want to see how betrayal turns into unstoppable power, subscribe now and watch closely. What he never saw coming is about to change everything. As she stepped out into the crisp night air, the city felt alive beneath her feet. Every sound, every movement, every distant car honk was a reminder that the world was moving, unaware that a storm had quietly risen above it. Clara Mitchell Grant, the woman Henry had abandoned, the mother of children he didn't know existed, the architect of an empire, was ready to pull the strings. And Henry was walking straight into her hands. Henry paced his penthouse suite. His expensive suit wrinkled from hours of tension. Juliet had stormed out earlier, slamming the door so hard it rattled the glass windows. Her voice still echoed in his head. You're failing. You're pathetic. If you don't fix this, everything is lost. He ran a hand through his hair, staring at the mountain of financial reports spread across the mahogany table. Nexitech was bleeding cash faster than he could patch it. Investors were panicking. Employees were quitting. And Juliet had begun criticizing every move he made. He had thought he could buy success, that he could escape the consequences of his decisions, but the truth was brutal. Every misstep, every rash investment, every compromise made for Juliet's ambitions had cornered him into desperation. A notification pinged on his phone. An email flagged urgent. Henry opened it quickly. His heart sank as he read. Investment opportunity. Immediate funding required or bankruptcy looms. He scrolled further, noting a familiar name in the advisory line. Someone he hadn't spoken to in years. And then it hit him. The only person with the resources, the influence, the power to save him. Clara. He sat down, head in his hands, realization dawning painfully. The woman he had discarded, the woman he had betrayed, was the only lifeline he had left. She has everything, he muttered under his breath. The money, the connections, the skill. She's the only one who can save this. His mind raced. He had imagined her crushed, powerless, fading into obscurity. Instead, she had rebuilt her life, cultivated influence, and quietly become untouchable. And now, she was the only hope for a man who had walked out on her without a second thought. Juliet's earlier criticisms echoed in his mind. You're weak. You can't even save your own company. Weak, powerless, failures. He realized the cruel irony. In leaving Clara, he had given up not only a loyal partner but someone who could have guided him through every storm. He sank into the chair, breathing heavily. How did I miss this? How could I be so blind? Meanwhile, Clara sat in her office, reviewing the latest proposals. She knew Henry's empire was teetering, but she hadn't expected him to reach out so quickly. David entered with the forwarded email. His expression calm but alert. He's desperate, David said. And he doesn't know who he's contacting. But he's coming to you. He'll need full transparency. or he'll fail entirely. Clara read the email, her lips curling into a subtle, controlled smile. She didn't feel glee at his desperation. No, she felt clarity. She was now in complete control. "David," she said softly, "prepare the terms. Absolute control. No exceptions. He thinks he can salvage his empire. But the reality is, he's stepping into my hands." David nodded. "Understood. But be prepared for manipulation, pleading, perhaps even anger. He's never been powerless before." Clara's eyes glinted with certainty. "Let him try. He doesn't realize that power isn't about money alone. It's about strategy, patience, and foresight. That's something he will never master." Back at Henry's penthouse, he typed out a carefully worded email, attempting to mask desperation with professionalism. "Clara, I hope this message finds you well. I am reaching out regarding Nexatech. We are facing significant challenges and require immediate investment to prevent collapse. Your expertise, guidance, and support would be invaluable. Please let me know if you can assist." He paused, fingers hovering over the send button. Pride warred with necessity. Every instinct screamed that this was a humiliating request, but survival demanded it. With a deep breath, he clicked send. Within moments, his email pinged in Clara's inbox. She opened it slowly, savoring the gravity of the moment. The man who had walked away, the man who had abandoned her in her darkest hours, was now at her mercy. David leaned in. "Do you want to reply immediately?" Clara shook her head. "Not yet. Let him wait. Let him feel the weight of every misstep, every careless decision, every moment he ignored what he had." She paused, thinking of the twins growing inside her. Liam and Lily would inherit not just wealth, but resilience, vision, and foresight. And their father, Henry, would learn a lesson in humility that no amount of money or power could teach. "David," she said softly, "draft the terms. Absolute control. Include clauses that protect my identity and my children. Make it airtight. When he signs, he relinquishes his freedom to me entirely." David nodded, impressed by her precision. "This is masterful. He won't know what hit him." Clara smiled faintly, almost to herself. "Let him come. Let him beg. Let him realize everything he ignored. And in the end, he will see who I truly am." Subscribe if you want to witness the moment someone who was abandoned rises to untouchable power. This is the turning point, the moment the past collides with the present, and the scales of fate shift. Across town, Henry's phone buzzed again. A reply from Clara's team appeared. The email was polite but firm. She was willing to discuss assistance, on very strict conditions. He froze, scanning the email repeatedly. His pulse raced. Pride, fear, and desperation collided inside him. He realized in that instant that he had lost more than money. He had lost control. He whispered under his breath, almost in disbelief, "Clara, what have I done?" And at that moment, Clara Mitchell Grant leaned back in her chair, eyes gleaming. The stage was set. The confrontation was inevitable. Henry had stepped directly into the hands of the woman he had underestimated, abandoned, and left behind. The game had changed. And Clara was untouchable. The conference room was immaculate, silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Henry walked in, stiff with tension, his briefcase in hand. He scanned the room and froze for a moment. Clara Mitchell Grant sat at the head of the table, calm, poised, untouchable. "Clara," he began, a hint of disbelief in his voice. She looked up slowly, eyes steady. "Henry." No warmth, no hint of the past they had shared. Just cold, deliberate composure. Henry swallowed hard. I didn't expect you. You didn't expect me to exist here," Clara finished for him. "But I do. And not just here. I control the outcome of everything you've built, everything you've touched, everything you think is yours." His jaw tightened. I need your help. Nexatech, it's collapsing. Investors are panicking." Clara held up a hand. Let me stop you right there. You're not asking for help. You're begging. And begging has consequences. Henry's face flushed. I didn't anticipate. You didn't anticipate that leaving me would cost you, Clara said sharply. You didn't anticipate that walking away from me, from your family, would one day place you entirely in my hands. But here you are, Henry. Exactly where you belong. The silence hung heavy. Henry opened his mouth, but no words came. He had underestimated her. Every arrogant assumption, every selfish decision, every thought that she would remain powerless, had been wrong. Clara leaned back, fingers lightly steepled. Let's be very clear. I will consider saving Nexatech. But I will do it only on my terms. You will relinquish control. Every decision, every asset, every strategic move will require my approval. Do you understand? Henry's voice faltered. I understand. But Clara, I need. No, she interrupted, voice firm. You had your chance. You walked away. And now you answer to me. I decide if your empire survives. Not you. Not Juliet. Me. Henry swallowed, the weight of her words settling like a physical force. He glanced briefly at the polished conference table, the city skyline beyond the windows, the woman who had once been his wife, and now his absolute authority. You're serious, he whispered. Clara's eyes didn't waver. Deadly serious. If you accept, I will save your company. But on my conditions. And I promise you this. Cross me and you lose everything. I guarantee it. Henry's pride warred with reality. Every fiber of his being resisted. But survival demanded submission. He nodded, defeated. I agree. Whatever you say. Clara's lips curved into the smallest cold smile. Good. That's the first lesson. Power belongs to those who recognize it. You didn't. I did. And now you will live by that rule. David, standing quietly at the side, handed over the legal documents. Everything has been prepared, Clara. Every clause, every condition, everything to protect your identity, your children, and your empire. Clara signed meticulously, her movements precise, controlled. Each signature was another assertion of dominance, a reaffirmation of the life she had built, the empire she commanded, and the children she protected. Henry watched in silence, shame and realization warring in his expression. He had wanted freedom, happiness, a fresh start with Juliet. Instead, he had walked directly into the hands of the woman he had abandoned, powerless and at her mercy. Clara leaned forward, voice calm but unyielding. One more thing, Henry. There's something you need to know. Henry's heart skipped a beat. What? You have children, she said. Twins. Conceived before our divorce. Liam and Lily. And they are yours. But you did not know, did not care, and now? The lives of these children are tied to me, not you. Protect them. That's your choice. Interfere. I control the narrative. Henry froze. His mind reeled. Weeks ago, he had believed he had escaped responsibility. Now the truth landed like a blow to the chest. Twins. Clara nodded, voice steady. Yes. And one more thing. You will not reconcile with me. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice, control, and clarity. You walked away. You bear the consequences. Tears welled in his eyes, pride battling shame. Clara. She cut him off gently but firmly. No apologies. No bargaining. You have lessons to learn, consequences to face, and a life to rebuild, if you can. And I suggest you do it quietly. Henry slumped, overwhelmed by the truth, by the power she held, by the life he had lost. Not just the money, but the family, the trust, the future he had ignored. Clara stood, gathering her things. She turned to David briefly. Everything is settled. Prepare the final transfer of control. David nodded, impressed. You did it flawlessly. Clara approached Henry one last time. Her voice softened just slightly. I forgive you, Henry. But forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Learn from this. Protect the children. And understand, nothing you do will ever put you above me again. She walked toward the door, leaving him to the weight of reality, the silence of his choices, and the crushing clarity of the woman he had discarded. Outside the conference room, Clara paused, took a deep breath and whispered almost to herself, "Liam, Lily, we are untouchable. Your father will understand soon enough. But we rise above it all." As Clara stepped into the city night, the lights below reflected the empire she had built, the children she would protect, and the power she now held. Henry remained in the conference room, powerless, defeated, and utterly aware of the life he had lost. The game was over, and Clara Mitchell Grant had won, without revenge, without malice, but with absolute control and clarity. Henry sat alone in his office, the city lights outside mocking him with their indifferent brilliance. Nexatech was stabilized, technically. Clara's terms had saved it, but the cost was immense. Every decision required her approval, every move scrutinized, and every outcome controlled by a woman he had once discarded. Juliet's calls went unanswered. She had grown frustrated with his lack of autonomy and the invisible hand now guiding him. "You're a puppet," she snapped during one meeting, her voice echoing in the empty boardroom. "I can't stand this. If you can't lead, then leave." Henry had no choice. Every deal, every investment, every strategic plan now required Clara's permission. The man who once wielded authority like a weapon now felt powerless, shackled by the consequences of his own arrogance. Across the city, Clara Mitchell Grant reviewed the latest reports from her empire. The Grant Foundation's projects were thriving. Scholarships were being awarded to deserving students, hospitals were opening, and communities flourished under her careful guidance. Every investment, every acquisition, every philanthropic initiative solidified her influence and ensured her children's future. She glanced at a photo of Liam and Lily, smiling innocently. They were growing inside her, her secret motivation, her strength. She had built a world where they would never feel powerless, never know the fear of betrayal she had endured. David entered quietly. "Clara, Henry is complying, though reluctantly. The company is stabilizing under your conditions. He's learning slowly what it means to have oversight, your oversight." Clara smiled faintly. "That's the point. He needs to understand that actions have consequences, that choices define a legacy, and that abandoning responsibility doesn't erase it." David nodded. "You've turned every misstep he made into leverage, every wrong decision into a teaching moment for him. And for the world watching." Clara raised an eyebrow. "For the world watching." "Your story," David said, "is inspiring people. They see a woman rise from betrayal to untouchable power. They see justice executed without malice, revenge replaced by control and purpose. And they're subscribing, following, learning. You're becoming a symbol." Clara's lips curved into a controlled smile. "Then let them watch. Let them see what strength, patience, and clarity can achieve. Let them learn that life doesn't reward cruelty or ignorance. It rewards foresight and resilience." Meanwhile, Henry faced board meetings where every suggestion he made was analyzed, questioned, or vetoed by Clara's oversight team. Investors respected the stability, but whispers of his lost autonomy circulated. Every interaction reminded him of the life he had taken for granted, the wife he abandoned, the children he didn't know existed, the empire he could have built with guidance rather than arrogance. One evening, as Henry sat alone reviewing balance sheets, he whispered into the empty room, voice thick with regret, "Clara, what have I done?" The answer was clear, and the pain was undeniable. Every financial gain now came with strings attached, every decision required approval, every victory tempered by the knowledge that a woman he had discarded was now untouchable, and in control of everything he once believed he owned. Clara, meanwhile, finalized a major acquisition, expanding her influence across multiple industries. Her name, Clara Mitchell Grant, became synonymous with vision, strategy, and integrity. She gave interviews to philanthropic magazines, appeared at charity events, and yet, her full power remained largely hidden. She was everywhere but untouchable. She allowed herself a moment of reflection. Liam, Lily. This is your world. Powerful. Full of opportunity. Nothing will take this from you. And nothing. Not Henry, not Juliet, not anyone who underestimated me, will ever have that power over us again. David entered with the latest social media metrics. Clara, your story continues to resonate. Millions are following your journey, subscribing to watch every step, every decision, every victory. People are inspired by your resilience. They see not just wealth but purpose. They see empowerment. Clara nodded, eyes distant but focused. Good. Let them see. Let them understand that life's greatest lessons are often learned through struggle, betrayal, and perseverance. And that the ultimate victory is control over one's destiny, not revenge. Back at Nexatech, Henry tried to rebuild his confidence, but it was hollow. Every victory felt hollow, every decision constrained, every interaction a reminder of his past mistakes. Juliet had left him months ago, unable to tolerate the oversight he now endured. The empire he thought he controlled was intact, but only because Clara allowed it to exist. Clara signed meticulously, her movements precise, controlled. Each signature was another assertion of dominance, a reaffirmation of the life she had built, the empire she commanded, and the children she protected. Henry watched in silence, shame and realization warring in his expression. He had wanted freedom, happiness, a fresh start with Juliet. Instead, he had walked directly into the hands of the woman he had abandoned, powerless and at her mercy. Clara leaned forward, voice calm but unyielding. One more thing, Henry. There's something you need to know. Henry's heart skipped a beat. What? You have children, she said. Twins. Conceived before our divorce. Liam and Lily. And they are yours. But you did not know, did not care, and now? The lives of these children are tied to me, not you. Protect them. That's your choice. Interfere. I control the narrative. Henry froze. His mind reeled. Weeks ago, he had believed he had escaped responsibility. Now, the truth landed like a blow to the chest. Twins. Clara nodded, voice steady. Yes. And one more thing. You will not reconcile with me. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice, control, and clarity. You walked away. You bear the consequences. Tears welled in his eyes, pride battling shame. Clara. She cut him off gently but firmly. No apologies. No bargaining. You have lessons to learn, consequences to face, and a life to rebuild, if you can. And I suggest you do it quietly. Henry slumped, overwhelmed by the truth, by the power she held, by the life he had lost. Not just the money, but the family, the trust, the future he had ignored. Clara stood, gathering her things. She turned to David briefly. Everything is settled. Prepare the final transfer of control. David nodded, impressed. You did it flawlessly. Clara approached Henry one last time. Her voice softened just slightly. I forgive you, Henry. But forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Learn from this. Protect the children. And understand. Nothing you do will ever put you above me again. She walked toward the door, leaving him to the weight of reality, the silence of his choices, and the crushing clarity of the woman he had discarded. Outside the conference room, Clara paused, took a deep breath and whispered almost to herself, Liam, Lily, we are untouchable. Your father will understand soon enough. But we rise above it all. As Clara stepped into the city night, the lights below reflected the empire she had built, the children she would protect, and the power she now held. Henry remained in the conference room, powerless, defeated, and utterly aware of the life he had lost. The game was over, and Clara Mitchell Grant had won, without revenge, without malice, but with absolute control and clarity. Henry sat alone in his office, the city lights outside mocking him with their indifferent brilliance. Nexatech was stabilized, technically. Clara's terms had saved it, but the cost was immense. Every decision required her approval, every move scrutinized, and every outcome controlled by a woman he had once discarded. Juliet's calls went unanswered. She had grown frustrated with his lack of autonomy and the invisible hand now guiding him. "You're a puppet," she snapped during one meeting, her voice echoing in the empty boardroom. "I can't stand this. If you can't lead, then leave." Henry had no choice. Every deal, every investment, every strategic plan now required Clara's permission. The man who once wielded authority like a weapon now felt powerless, shackled by the consequences of his own arrogance. Across the city, Clara Mitchell Grant reviewed the latest reports from her empire. The Grant Foundation's projects were thriving. Scholarships were being awarded to deserving students, hospitals were opening, and communities flourished under her careful guidance. Every investment, every acquisition, every philanthropic initiative solidified her influence and ensured her children's future. She glanced at a photo of Liam and Lily, smiling innocently. They were growing inside her, her secret motivation, her strength. She had built a world where they would never feel powerless, never know the fear of betrayal she had endured. David entered quietly. "Clara, Henry is complying, though reluctantly. The company is stabilizing under your conditions. He's learning slowly what it means to have oversight, your oversight." Clara smiled faintly. "That's the point. He needs to understand that actions have consequences, that choices define a legacy, and that abandoning responsibility doesn't erase it." David nodded. "You've turned every misstep he made into leverage, every wrong decision into a teaching moment for him. And for the world watching." Clara raised an eyebrow. "For the world watching." "Your story," David said, "is inspiring people. They see a woman rise from betrayal to untouchable power. They see justice executed without malice, revenge replaced by control and purpose. And they're subscribing, following, learning. You're becoming a symbol." Clara's lips curved into a controlled smile. "Then let them watch. Let them see what strength, patience, and clarity can achieve. Let them learn that life doesn't reward cruelty or ignorance. It rewards foresight and resilience." Meanwhile, Henry faced board meetings where every suggestion he made was analyzed, questioned, or vetoed by Clara's oversight team. Investors respected the stability, but whispers of his lost autonomy circulated. Every interaction reminded him of the life he had taken for granted, the wife he abandoned, the children he didn't know existed, the empire he could have built with guidance rather than arrogance. One evening, as Henry sat alone reviewing balance sheets, he whispered into the empty room, voice thick with regret, "Clara, what have I done?" The answer was clear, and the pain was undeniable. Every financial gain now came with strings attached, every decision required approval, every victory tempered by the knowledge that a woman he had discarded was now untouchable, and in control of everything he once believed he owned. Clara, meanwhile, finalized a major acquisition, expanding her influence across multiple industries. Her name, Clara Mitchell Grant, became synonymous with vision, strategy, and integrity. She gave interviews to philanthropic magazines, appeared at charity events, and yet, her full power remained largely hidden. She was everywhere but untouchable. She allowed herself a moment of reflection. "Liam, Lily, this is your world. Powerful, full of opportunity. Nothing will take this from you. And nothing. Not Henry, not Juliet, not anyone who underestimated me, will ever have that power over us again." David entered with the latest social media metrics. "Clara, your story continues to resonate. Millions are following your journey, subscribing to watch every step, every decision, every victory. People are inspired by your resilience. They see not just wealth but purpose. They see empowerment." Clara nodded, eyes distant but focused. "Good. Let them see. Let them understand that life's greatest lessons are often learned through struggle, betrayal, and perseverance. And that the ultimate victory is control over one's destiny, not revenge." Back at Nexatech, Henry tried to rebuild his confidence, but it was hollow. Every victory felt hollow, every decision constrained, every interaction a reminder of his past mistakes. Juliet had left him months ago, unable to tolerate the oversight he now endured. The empire he thought he controlled was intact, but only because Clara allowed it to exist. He stared at the skyline, the city stretching endlessly before him, and whispered, voice thick with regret, She's untouchable. No. I walked away. Meanwhile, Clara hosted a gala for the Grant Foundation. Guests mingled, laughter and music filling the grand hall, but Clara moved with purpose, scanning the room with eyes sharp and calculating. She spoke to key investors, philanthropists, and industry leaders, solidifying alliances, cultivating influence, and ensuring that her empire and her children's future remained untouchable. She paused for a moment, tapping her phone. A brief message went out to her followers. Subscribe. Watch closely. Witness how someone transforms betrayal into unstoppable power. This is not revenge. This is mastery, control, and purpose. As the night progressed, Clara stepped onto the balcony, gazing out over the city. The lights shimmered like a promise of endless opportunity. Every investment, every philanthropic project, every calculated move had secured her legacy. She had turned betrayal into strength, heartbreak into strategy, and secrecy into power. Inside her mind, a quiet thought echoed. Henry will never forget this. And neither will anyone who underestimated me. But more importantly, Liam and Lily will inherit a world built on clarity, resilience, and absolute control. Clara Mitchell Grant had not just survived. She had risen. And the world finally was paying attention. The city skyline glittered under the fading light of dusk, a quiet witness to a story of betrayal, resilience, and triumph. Clara Mitchell Grant stood in the Grant Foundation's boardroom, the air crisp with purpose. Reports lay neatly stacked on the table, detailing new philanthropic initiatives, business expansions, and investments that solidified her empire. Every decision, every calculated move reinforced her position, not only as a billionaire entrepreneur but as a mother, a strategist, and a woman who had turned heartbreak into unstoppable power. David, her advisor and confidant, observed her quietly. Clara, it's done. You've not only stabilized your empire but transformed it into something untouchable. Henry, he's learning to live within your terms. He'll never forget it, and the world now sees you as a force in your own right. Clara smiled faintly, though her eyes carried a quiet weight. I never wanted revenge, David. That would be empty. What I wanted was clarity, justice, and the safety of my children. Liam and Lily. Everything I've done has been for them. Her hand instinctively rested on her stomach. And soon they will know the world they inherit is one of strength, opportunity, and purpose. Nothing will ever take that from them. Not betrayal, not greed, not ignorance. David nodded. You've set a standard, Clara. People are subscribing, following, learning. Your story resonates because it's authentic. It's about power, resilience, and dignity. And now, Clara's eyes sparkled with determination. Now we finish what we started. The foundation is stable, the business empire is secure, and Henry, well, he's had his lesson. Meanwhile, across the city, Henry sat alone in his office. The man who had once walked away from Clara with arrogance and entitlement now lived under the consequences of his decisions. Nexatech was surviving, but only under Clara's oversight. Every board decision, every investment, every partnership required approval. Pride had been replaced by humility, confidence replaced by caution, and arrogance replaced by respect for the woman who had surpassed him in every measure. He opened a file Clara had sent him earlier, detailing conditions and responsibilities. The weight of her authority was tangible. Henry realized that survival was no longer about ego. It was about compliance, awareness, and acknowledgement of his mistakes. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a quiet pang of regret. Not just for the financial control she now held, but for the children he didn't know existed and the life he had abandoned. Back at the Grant Foundation Gala, Clara mingled with investors, philanthropists, and media representatives. Cameras flashed, but Clara moved with purpose, her focus unwavering. She wasn't seeking validation. She was demonstrating power, integrity, and the ability to transform adversity into opportunity. A young woman approached her hesitantly. "Ms. Grant, I just want to say your story. It's inspiring. I lost everything once too, and seeing how you've built yourself back up, it gives me hope." Clara's lips curved into a gentle smile. "Thank you. Remember, it's never about revenge or dwelling on what was lost. It's about taking control of your own life, making purposeful decisions, and ensuring your future, and the future of those you love, is secure. That's the only way to truly rise." As the night progressed, Clara retreated to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The lights reflected the world she had rebuilt, a world where betrayal had been transformed into power, where heartbreak had been transmuted into strategy, and where love for her children was the guiding force behind every move. She whispered almost to herself, "Liam, Lily, this is our world. Powerful, full of opportunity. Nothing will ever take this from you. And everything your father lost will be remembered as a lesson, not as a weapon. We rise above." Her phone buzzed with notifications. Social media metrics showed millions following her story, subscribing to witness every step, every calculated move, every triumph. People were inspired by her journey, not just by her wealth, but by her resilience, strategy, and integrity. Back in his office, Henry stared at the city skyline through the glass. He was a man who had learned the hardest lessons. That choices have consequences, that greed and arrogance blind perception, and that power is earned, not taken. The woman he had abandoned had not only surpassed him, but she had also redefined the world around them. He whispered almost to himself, "Clara, you were always stronger than I realized." Clara, meanwhile, returned to her office, reviewing the final reports of the Grant Foundation's initiatives and her business empire's expansions. She smiled with quiet satisfaction. The world she had built was untouchable. The legacy she was creating for her children was secure. And the lessons Henry had learned, though painful, were his alone to carry. She reached for a framed photo of Liam and Lily, resting it gently on her desk. "This," she whispered, "is everything. They will never know the fear, the betrayal, or the powerlessness I endured. They will only inherit strength, opportunity, and clarity. That is my legacy. That is our future." As the city lights flickered like a constellation beneath her, Clara Mitchell Grant realized that she had not just survived betrayal, she had transcended it. She had built a world where love, strategy, and purpose outweighed greed and ignorance. She had found peace, achieved her goals, and secured a future for her children that no one could ever take away. And in that quiet moment, she allowed herself a final thought. Soft, resolute, and powerful. This is not revenge. This is mastery. This is life lived on my terms. And anyone who underestimates me will eventually learn that Clara Mitchell Grant is untouchable. Clara Mitchell Grant's journey is a powerful reminder that betrayal and heartbreak do not define us. Our choices, resilience, and vision do. From being abandoned and underestimated, she transformed her pain into purpose, creating an untouchable legacy for herself and her children. Henry's downfall illustrates the consequences of greed and arrogance, while Clara's rise demonstrates that true power lies in clarity, strategy, and self-respect. Her story is proof that you can turn any setback into a stepping stone, that strength grows in the face of adversity, and that peace and success are far sweeter than revenge. If Clara's journey inspired you, don't just watch. Take control of your own story. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to follow more incredible stories of empowerment, resilience, and triumph over betrayal. Every click supports the message. No one can define your destiny except you.